Welcome to Writers Not Writing. This used to be a show where I interviewed authors about the ways they procrastinated, and I'm sure we'll still have some of that. But in these times, I want to use this show to highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. Whether we're writing or not writing, we need to be defending one another. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer, who hitched a ride in my suitcase. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff, and Doug does his best to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, help me keep a roof over my head, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Okay, here we go. If I take my time. Hail and well met readers and reviewers. Today's guests are Jessi Honard and Marie Parks. Jessi Honard and Marie Parks are the best friend co-authors of Unrelenting, a multi-award winning paranormal thriller about a woman's search for her missing sister and the sinister magic she encounters along the way. Hello, Jessi. Hello, Marie. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
I am excited. So Unrelenting has been chosen as the book of the month for the Indulge Your Shelf Book Club. So this will be fun for the folks who are in the book club to get to hear from the two of you. And I have been excited to hear about the kind of goings on in your lives as well. What are some things that have happened in your lives just in this last month?
Actually, we got to hang out in person, which doesn't happen to us very much.
Very nice. Where was that?
Well, we did it twice. We first had a chance to meet up at a writing/work retreat and in Tennessee. We went to Sea Rock City and all the other fun stuff you do down in southeastern Tennessee. And then we also went to Arizona. Do you want to pick up on that one, Jessi?
So we did a little camping trip in Sedona. It was over my birthday, which was really nice. It was really great to get out of the cold and spend some time in the desert. Camping is one of the things that Marie and I have done since the earliest days of our friendship. So we did a little camping trip, got to hike in the Red Rocks and just separate ourselves from the world for a couple of days. It was wonderful.
Oh, that is very cool. And so you folks are co-authors, but Jessi, you're now living in Michigan, and Marie, you're living
Yes.
in New Mexico. And when you were co-authoring, you weren't living in the same places either. Jessi, you were in California in the Bay Area, right? And Marie, you were initially where? You moved to New Mexico during the writing, right?
The I don't remember exactly. I guess so. It's been a long time. But before I lived in New Mexico, I was a full-time RVer. So I was changing location every couple of weeks.
Yeah. So you learned how to do the co-writing via Zoom thing. How does that process? This is one of our reader questions. Karen Eisenbray was wondering about
Thank
how
you.
does the yes, great author herself. How did the co-authoring work? How does that? You guys have a process.
We do, yeah. It's interesting because, over the years we've met a lot of co-author teams, and this question comes up frequently. And I think every set of co-authors I've talked to has a different answer. Every process is different, which is really fascinating to see because someone will be like, "Oh, this is what I do," and Maria and I will be like, "That would never work for us, not in a million years." So our process is a very organic, live, synchronized process. We don't do a lot async, which unfortunately right now means that Marie has to get up at the crack of dawn for our writing because of time zones. But we like you said, it's in Zoom or Discord, and we have a Google Doc open. One of us is writing actively new content, and the other person is just a few sentences, maybe a paragraph behind, editing what is being written.
Wow.
Eventually, the writer runs out of steam and is like, I can't go on, please save me. And so the person who's editing takes over the kind of frontline writing, and the writer flips into editing mode. And so we just loop back and forth until we both run out of steam and call it for the day.
And how did you come to this? Like, was that very intentional from the jump, or was that just what kind of evolved organically?
It was pretty natural. I think a lot of it probably comes from the fact that before we were writing like prose stories together, we met on a forum for Animorphs, the hit sci-fi horror series in the 90s that we were perfectly aged for.
Yes, the kids with the
And
'90s attitude and superpowers.
Yep.
the very best. I will just talk forever about Animorphs if you let me, but I want to get back to co-writing. Um, but just to say that we met on a forum where there was, conversations, but there were also little role plays happening. And so it was very natural to have that give and take, give and take, give and take. And so then we started writing stories outside of that context. And again, it was really familiar. The other thing we're doing now, so right now we're in hopefully final revisions for the sequel to
I
Unrelenting.
know. I'm so excited.
Yay! So the last thing we're doing right now, just to mop it up, essentially, is getting on Discord and reading it aloud to each other
Mhm.
because you catch so many little things.
So many.
A lot of them are just like, oh, I just used the word hand here, and then I said hand it off a sentence later. But sometimes it's, oh, that was a discrepancy. We said that that was a room with two beds in it, and it has one bed or whatever. So, hopefully we are at that stage where we're tidying like that level of sort of micro detail. But it really does help with capturing it. But we even do that together because again, sort of two minds are better than one, even if it is 6 a.m. for me. It's still helpful to have both of us on it.
I'll bet authors out there, I'm sitting there going, I don't know if I would love that or hate it. Like, having somebody edit a few sentences back, and then I mean, it's a skill set that you've developed, the ability to be able to go, okay, somebody else is going to be writing ahead, and now I'm, switching into editor mode. That I think would take some getting used to, but you'd already essentially practiced it.
Yeah, and it's honestly not something that I would be able to easily like lift and do with someone else.
Yeah.
To an extent, I think there's sort of two versions of that skill set you're talking about that were honed. One is in addition to being co-authors for a long time, Marie and I were running a business together, and it was a copywriting and content agency. And so we got very used to people picking our work apart. Like, so, zero hard feelings, very thick skin. That helps a lot. The other thing that helps a lot is we have a lot of trust between us. And this doesn't necessarily work for all co-writing duos. Often you hear people say like, don't start a book with your best friend, don't go into business with your best friend, don't do this because it does also impact the relationship side of things. But when it works, when the trust is there and the respect is there and the practice is there, and you learn how to navigate conflict or differing opinions and things like that, it works really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of that is the luck of meeting the right person who you can work
Yeah,
with that
totally.
well. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody that would work for. Well, I don't mean to change gears too hard here and grind the gears a little bit, but I do want to ask. A lot has been going on in the United States. I'm watching it from this vantage point from afar, but I am deeply concerned, and so I wanted to ask how you've been navigating the news, what you've been seeing, and if you have any kind of tips for readers in how to handle what is happening.
Um, I can dive in first on this one. So I may answer a little backwards. I'm always going to recommend people pick up a copy of Never Say You Can't Survive by Charlie Jane Anders. Um, just the prologue of that book alone is worth its weight in gold because she talks about the importance of escapism and our duty to take as many people with us, and that escapism is a form of resistance because we are creating a vision of what the world can be. obviously we may not be able to have dragons, but we could have, people who are kind to each other.
Yeah, people who
Um,
demonstrate courage, people who stand up for one another. I mean, it really is vitally important.
Totally. And the whole book that Jessi actually gifted to me several years ago is really great for just navigating how to write when things are tough. So that I just continue to pick up that book, certain chapters, and come back to it. And it just kind of gives me the pick me up I need. And I will forever be grateful to Jessi for giving me that book and to Charlie Jane for writing it. So that one's huge. I mean, I think otherwise it's for me, I mean, I work most weeks 40 to more usually 60 hours. So it's tough. It's honestly, it kind of keeps me distracted. And
Yeah.
that may or may not be a good thing. It may be the thing that keeps me compliant or too focused on just the daily grind to be able to do a whole lot in terms of activism. But I've definitely tried to consolidate my news intake to, okay, what are the like five things I need to know on the federal level? What are the like five things I need to know on my state/local level for the day or the week? And I know I'm missing a lot, but also it's actually helping me with my mental health to be able to have the bandwidth to cope with the things I am seeing, to be able to call representatives as I can. I usually just leave the messages because by the time I'm working, it's like 10 p.m. in Washington, D.C. But you do what you can. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
no,
me.
but I think that's the 5 and 5, like having a number, even if it were 3 and 3. What are the three?
Sure.
Is really wise because it not only forces you to limit your intake, but it forces you to go beyond the one story that may just be the distraction. I was talking
Yeah.
to my wife and kid. We were gabbing last night about some case that had been really really important to them in the like early aughts maybe of a kidnapping. It was one of these true crime stories, and they could pull all these details about this woman who claimed that her daughter was missing, and then it turned out she was probably the murderer, and it was but none of those details are relevant to their lives. Like this was one of those 2 weeks solid CNN news blitzes. And if you go, okay, I understand that case is important to a lot of folks, but it's just one story and it's actually irrelevant to me. I have to go to what is happening at my state. What is going on in the legislature? What's the bill that is going to determine whether or not I have clean water? That's
Yeah.
going to be a lot more important right now. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's wise. Limiting but focusing. Okay,
And
what are the
I'm
things I need to know?
right. And I'll say one other thing, which is I'm lucky that my state and my city, most of the things coming out of that are pretty exciting actually
Yeah.
right now. And so I know not everybody has that. This is actually my first time in my whole life that I'm living in a state that's more aligned with my beliefs and my values. So I understand what it is to live in a place that doesn't really seem to care about people, but or at least not me, as a woman, as a queer person. But um that really is a reprieve too, to see like, okay, everything's on fire federally, but like I feel like things are going okay here. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And Jessi, how about that move to Michigan in that way? That's a culture shock from the Bay Area to some extent. But how
It
has that been?
is, yeah. It's a very different place. In some ways, I was prepared for it because I grew up in Ohio. So I grew up in the Midwest, and so some of the culture, like the existence of Midwest nice, I'm
Uh-huh.
very, very familiar with that. I know how to navigate it. But politically, it's been interesting because Berkeley has a reputation for being very progressive and very vocal about its progressiveness. It has its problems. It has areas where it falls short hard. Um, but there were often conversations around those areas, and it felt like people were mostly on the same page. Michigan's a swing state, and I'm lucky to live in a college town that swings mostly blue, but you don't have to go far
Yeah.
to find a, giant Trump banner on the side of a barn. And you also don't have to go far to feel the impacts of things that are happening. I was just reading yesterday about how, Ontario is responsible for our electric network, and we just got a 25% tariff.
Yep.
So, like, we're being directly impacted by these things, even as like a purple state. Um, I think a lot of it has to do with who you surround yourself with. A lot of it has to do with the community you build and being intentional about it, making sure that you're prepared for the moments that happen out in the world that are not in alignment with your values because they happen a lot more often here. Just like something someone will say offhanded where they expect the people around them to agree. And my reaction is, oh, I do not think like that at all. And that's jarring after coming from a place like Berkeley. So there's a little bit of a reorientation, and it's been really important for me to try and find groups of people who I know will help support me. Even tangentially, one of the big things that I've done since moving here is join and sort of end up running a book club for readers, not for writers, which has been a joy because I'm so immersed in the writing world that sometimes I feel like, you know, maybe read and indulge yourself is another really great virtual way to do that. And so there's this nice like balance between finding these virtual communities and finding these in-person communities that reflect kind of where I want my mental state to be and what my values are, while also not completely boxing out the rest of the conversation. Like it's not about creating a bubble, but it is about creating a safe space.
And that is a difficult tension sometimes, to
Yeah.
recognize in yourself, like, oh, did I create a bubble there, or did I reach out enough, or did I reach out too much and just burn a lot of my energy on things that are not constructive? um
Yeah.
yeah, that is an important thing for, I think, everyone to keep thinking about. Am I building a community or am I building a bubble? And how to navigate that. So self-care is important in this. What have been some distractions that have helped you charge your batteries?
I mean, work is always a distraction.
Well, and that's the, I mean, but Marie, you hinted at this too, because that tends to be mine. I'll just work more. And that can
Yeah.
be good. And that can be, I mean, it can feel productive. Yeah, I got the dopamine hit. I checked some boxes off, but also
Mhm.
finding something that is recharging is important. Have you been able to find anything where you're going, okay, this was good for my soul?
Yeah, I think on my end, this goes back to kind of the shift from California to Michigan. This is the first time in 18 years that I've had a winter. And so one of the things my wife and I have been doing is every Saturday, we're like, okay, what winter thing are we going to do now that's outside in the world, not like us hiding away from the snow and the like cold, to just like find enjoyment in our new locale. And so, we've gone on hikes and we've gone ice skating and just things like that that get us out of yeah, the news cycle, but also just like I think the malaise that kind of comes along with the winter months sometimes, especially in a state where it responds to winter with goodbye sun forever.
Yeah.
Like it's just the sun ceases to exist. And I'm very susceptible to that. So like you add on the political climate and all of that on top of that, and it's a recipe for like I just want to sit in front of the fire and stare at the flames and just not move for a year. So I think that intentionality about like leaving finding activities that move my body, that get me out into nature. Both of those things are very important to me. And so I kind of hone in on those.
Yeah. Yeah, Marie, how about you? What's been filling your cup, as the overused metaphor goes?
Yeah, for sure. So, I I love playing music. And right now my new obsession is hammer dulcimer. So about
Oh, that's cool.
3 or 4 years ago, I bought one. Um, I actually used to work at a music store when I was in high school and college on like, winter break and summer break. And they had a room that was for consignment instruments, and there was a hammer dulcimer in there, and my little piano brain could not understand this thing. And I thought someday I'm going to figure it out. And so then, 15 years later, or whatever, I ended up with one. Still couldn't really quite figure it out. And then, got divorced, moved a few times, like lost the time and interest in looking at it until I discovered that the branch of the public library that just happens to be closest to my house just happens to have a dulcimer meetup once a month.
What?
In a state where there's very little sort of Appalachian music.
I was gonna say, I don't think of, the New
Yeah.
Mexico bluegrass scene.
Right, exactly. There's not a lot of, but there is like, I guess, a few little like Celtic music sessions and things like that. And I don't know if this is related to that or not. But anyway, there's a thriving but microscopic mountain and hammer dulcimer scene.
Cool.
And so yeah, so that's been really nice because now I have it set up all the time in my room. So as I may be like at my desk working, and then I go to the restroom, and on my way back to my desk, I play like one song and then I keep going. And sometimes I'll play for hours, but it also gives me new tunes to learn. And again, what Jessi was saying, like a really intentional community to meet. We don't actually talk about the world at all. But we're just brought together by a shared interest in music and a love of it. And they let me know about, any like music festivals that might be going on in nearby states. And it's just really lovely to have that, and also kind of the accountability of like, did you practice? So that's been
Yeah.
really
Well,
fun.
and folks who don't know Hamel Dulcimer, it's a beautiful instrument, and it's almost like inherently soothing. Like the way that it sounds, I've only heard recordings of professionals, so I don't. It might be like violin, where until you know what you're doing, but it is a beautiful instrument. It's got kind of almost a harp quality,
Yeah.
and yeah, I love that. Was there kind of a breakthrough moment where you went from I can't figure this thing out to oh, it's starting to make sense?
Yeah. So I'm not gifted with a lot of things, but one of the things I am gifted with is sort of this intuitive nature around music and music theory. And also I think part of that it's just like, I've played piano since I was 5. I played cello since I was 12, played handbells for many years. But I do have a lot of percussion experience specifically, and that's including piano being a percussion instrument, and so is hammer dulcimer. And so I think that really helped. But really, the first time I went to it, there was one of the founders of the group came over and said, "This is how it works," and it just immediately clicked. Once I could see it, it's for anyone who plays piano, it's backwards. So the low notes are on the right and the high notes are on the left. So that I just had to flop my
Yeah.
brain over. Um, and then yeah, it's basically a piano, except instead of hitting keys that then whack a hammer against a string, you're just whacking the string. You're just taking off the keys. And so, yeah, it's sort of a deconstructed piano. And I think once I figured that out, it made a lot of sense. So, yeah.
I used to work in a piano refinishing
Oh,
factory. I mean, there were like two of us. And one of the things I would occasionally do is get a couple of just pencils with erasers and beat on the because it sounds like the soundtrack of a horror movie. I mean, it is not a good
yeah,
sound. It's really, really terrifying.
yeah,
But in the dark at 3 a.m. at this factory, and I'd be because you can. I mean, you almost can't hit a wrong note because you're creating a horror soundtrack. Like it sounds so freaky, but it was like this proto, that I mean
yeah.
that is that weird sound of, but the hammer dulcimer is like in tune.
It's a little sweeter than that. Yeah,
Yes,
but yeah,
it's not that eerie. Ugh. But yeah, I mean, if you just
yeah,
whack on the strings in a piano, it sounds real weird.
I have heard that. Yeah.
So, speaking of your gifts, I have been very excited to have you two on. I've decided to start this thing where we tell a serial story each week, and that way folks who come back to the show get more and more of this story. And this has been helpful to me because it's set in the universe of the novel that I'm writing, only very, very far away from the other characters. It's literally called The Side Quest. And so this is the story of an 11-year-old little girl, and she decides she is leaving home after her father has left her in the care of somebody else there in town, and she can't take it anymore. She wants to be out having adventures, and town is not great. And so she decides to sneak away. And where we left off last week, the character's name is Zill Naroth, and Zill decides she cannot stay in town anymore. It is now being run by kind of the town bully, because the guards have been brought into the military, and including her father. And so she, and she witnesses the townspeople just kind of say, what are we going to do? I guess this guy's in charge now. And so, Zill can't fight them off, but she also can't abide it. And she decides to leave. And she hitches a ride, excuse me, with a merchant. Well, not even, we don't know who this person is. She hitches a ride on a wagon that is riding out, that is one of the merchant wagons that comes to the market. And so now I put it to you, who is driving this wagon? And she leaves in the early morning. How long does she get on this wagon before she's discovered? And let's tell that story of Zill and who finds her.
One thing that immediately pops up to me that I think is interesting is you said it's early morning and it's a merchant wagon. And usually when I think of merchants, I think of them coming to the towns in the morning to sell their wares rather than leaving. So I imagine that this would be a person who whatever they're doing in town happens at night.
Okay. Yeah. So they came, they came for the market, and that would have been, at least a full day. But you're right, they could have had some involvement in the evening there. And now they're leaving for the long journey. We don't know where they're going. She doesn't either. This village is way at the edge of the empire, which is why it's, now having its, people taken into the military. The country is kind of threatened externally. And so she's way out in the hinterlands. There's really only one direction people go, and that's back in toward the interior. And she doesn't know the destination of this particular cart, and she hitches a ride. In fact, we don't even know where she hitches a ride in this cart. Does she hang on the back? Does she climb inside? How does she get herself out of town?
Well, you see, there's a canvas sort of strapped over the top just to make sure nothing falls out, because these roads are not the smoothest roads. There's no need to make roads this far out that smooth.
Oh yeah.
But up under there's enough space for, a small child, such as Zill. But otherwise the space is almost completely taken over by baskets and little crates. But she also realizes it's been a while since she's maybe had a snack. So she's like, maybe there's something in here. And she is, quiet, but you don't have to be that quiet when the road is just so clattery. Lifts up one of the basket's tops and sees there are a lot of berries inside. These are not edible berries. These are berries that are prized because when you crush them, it's one of the few properties of them is that they're actually resistant to water. So you can make ink out of them that actually could be put on documents that could go to the very far away Marfolk. But I don't know if Zill knows this. What do you think, Jessi?
I mean, I think she's probably had some experience in, wandering around near her town, looking at different things so that she can recognize that maybe this is a type of berry she's seen before, but not necessarily place it. And so I feel like first of all, she's hungry. And so she has to battle her stomach a little bit. But I think, at least initially, she's going to take a look at some of the other baskets, see if anything else inside of them will help place what the purpose of this basket of berries is. If she finds more food, maybe that means they're edible. If she finds something else, and the next basket she opens has parchment in it, and the next basket she opens has undyed clothing in it, and the next basket she opens has unspun wool in it. And so she's starting to get this picture of, well, it's a little weird that there's a basket of berries back here with all of this other non-edible stuff.
Well, and I will tell you, this is one of the fun things about this world. The parchment itself of that is used for the paper is made out of a magical plant, and all the books in this world, when they are composed correctly by the magical scribes, are alive. So that will be one of the fun things in the larger book. So that paper is magic paper. I don't know if she would know that. She's very far away. But yes, she finds magic paper. She finds berries for the ink. So that is giving her a sense of, yeah, the books in this world are very fun because if they are very difficult books, they're very difficult books. They growl at you, they snap at you, they're not nice. And some books are easy. Some books are friendly. They purr and they kind of rub against you and they let you know this is an easy book, And so all the books are animated because they're all magical in that way. And so she's just found the blank parchment, though, which is made out of the paper that makes the books magic. Only the books in the capital are these magic books, but that would be this parchment, which has some magical qualities. So, but that's cool. And I hadn't thought about the ink element too. So now we've got the berries for the ink for the magic books. So now she's found the berries, the wool, the parchment. What is she starting to piece together? And is it enough, or do we now need to introduce the driver?
Well, I mean, I think she's discovering this is a person who maybe doesn't sell the completed items, but maybe collects and sells the bits and bobs that are needed to make those items. So this may be a B2B merchant. um, but I think as she's figuring that out, they're like, I don't know that there's a whole lot of use for a lot of this for me right now. There is one last basket that looks a little different from the others. And she opens it up and it has a little napkin inside. There's like a little sort of camping silverware set in there just for like on the go. And there looks to be a scone that looks a little past its prime, but maybe still edible. Bingo. This is perfect breakfast. So she takes a bite and it feels like her teeth are going to fall out because it is so stale and it makes such a deafening crunching noise in her ears. And apparently it is loud enough that the cart stops. And there's the sound of footsteps approaching the back of the cart where she is hiding.
Okay, so as she hears these footsteps, what does Zild do?
Her first instinct is to hide and try to shove the crumbs of the scone back into the basket as fast as she can. Not very neatly. There's still crumbs all along the floor of the cart. And then duck behind another one of the baskets because she wants to see what she's dealing with. Like who is this person who has been giving her a generous free ride unknowingly? And the unfortunate thing is there are a lot of baskets and they're not like super tall. So like she can squeeze behind them, but it's not the best hiding space in the world. It's not designed to last. So she gets as far back in the wagon as she can. She finds a little place to hide with the baskets in front of her, and she finds like a little like gap in the fabric between baskets, just to peer through so that she can at least get a sense of who this person is before she decides her next move.
And so this will tell us a lot about this person. First of all, does the person spot her? And how do they react when they spot, if they spy her? Do they immediately go, there you are, or kind of play along? You know how when a kid hides and you kind of go, I can't see you either. Like, does this person immediately go, hey, you're in my cart, or huh, there's a foot just sticking out from a basket. Don't know what that could be. Like, so is she discovered, and how is she discovered?
I personally am a sucker for characters who are jerks with a heart of gold. So, um, that's my first instinct is, the canvas is lifted, a foot is spotted, and the demand to get the heck out of these baskets is issued. But I
So
don't know. What do you think, Josie?
Yes, and yes, I think definitely like someone who is a bit gruff on the outside but has a heart of gold. But I think prior to being like, get out of my cart, I think that this person would play along, but not in like a maternal sweet way, in a way where they're really just kind of like, like, oh yeah, it seems like there's no one in my cart, clearly hitching a ride and doing things that they shouldn't do, and just sort of like continue to rub it in a little bit until like Zill knows she's been caught way before the get out of my cart happens. And so like, her stomach is sinking and this person's just rubbing it in and then eventually is like, yeah, you need to move along.
she has to endure some sarcasm for a while
Yeah.
without like revealing herself, but the jig is up. Like,
Yeah.
yes, oh, I
Some
love it.
small part of her mind is like, maybe they're just like saying that to see if I'll reveal myself,
Right.
completely unaware of the fact that an entire foot is sticking out.
Yes, yes. Okay, so the person then has found her. She realizes that's it. I've been found, and she is got this little line of sight. What now? We have to figure out what this person looks like, because she would see them before she would know their name, those kinds of things. And in this world, there are four. In this culture, there are four distinct genders. So there are men, women, Timon, and Haman. And no, Haman are the men. Women, Haman, Timon, Zaman. And so the Zaman are the kind of monk class. Often they are they're ace. They shave their heads and faces. They don't actually shave. Everybody grows these kind of corally locks, but they polish their heads so they have no hair, and that's the way that they present. And then the Timon often like will polish one side of their head, maybe side of a beard, and they are uh, you know, gender. We don't have quite the same gender, but it is they are non-binary, clearly non-binary, and then Haman and women. So, what is the gender of this person who is mocking her as she is hiding behind these baskets, and how do they look to her?
Gender is cat, clearly.
Yes.
There
After
is
they
cat.
made her. Um, ooh, I, for some reason, I was going to the Zyman like immediately. I don't know why my brain kind of like latched onto that, but that's the one that like when before you even asked the question, when I was thinking about like what this person was doing and whatnot, like that's the sort of like aura I had
Yeah.
about them.
And I have found this challenging. The pronouns would be they and zer. So you just he and she and her become they and zer. So uh, uh, and Zill knows, even though in this culture it's very acceptable for kids later to kind of determine their gender. Zill already feels that she will be a woman, so she is uses she her pronouns. So she sees this person, and they're looking at her through this gap, and so they're actually seeing one another now. And what does this person look like?
I'm gonna say a little scary. Angular features, pretty stern look on the face. And tall, but that may just be the fact that Zill is crouched among baskets and sort of low down. A little hard to say. I mean, also, I remember being Zill's age, and everyone seemed pretty tall to me at the time.
Yes. And as a Zaman would have their locks polished on their face and their head. So that in and of itself is going to be more unusual for her. There are some Zaman and Taiman in town that's just, but the percentages are lower in these really, really rural areas, whereas more in the big city. So she's not super familiar with, doesn't know a lot of Zaman. So right away, that's going to be, okay, here's this person with their locks polished looking at me. What is the person's voice like?
I mean, I think there's definitely a sarcastic edge to it, just based on what we were saying earlier. And to me, it feels like, at least from Zill's perspective, being younger, being smaller, seeing someone who's unfamiliar in some ways, it would be a voice that feels authoritative, like one that you don't want to disobey this voice because you don't know what is on the other side of disobeying it.
Yes. Okay, so we've got our character. They've found Zill. I want to make sure that I'm respecting your time. So we could go on and on and on, but we need a bit of a cliffhanger here. So the decision point here is, for Zill is, when Zill kind of steps out, is this person going to force them to go home or bring them along? So how does that conversation go?
Well, the crumbs, as Jessi mentioned earlier, are a bit everywhere. And this seems to be a problem because this was going to be lunch. And so someone says, you can come with me, but only because I need you to get me a new lunch. Otherwise, you're going to have to leave because you just stole from me.
And that could even be Zill's gambit, because Zill is grew up as the guard's daughter, messing around in the wilderness. Maybe Zill can say, I can round you up some lunch if you'll just keep taking me, and kind of earns herself. Okay, so we will leave off with Zill having made a play to continue on this journey, but now the onus is on Zill to actually provide lunch, which might not be the easiest task out in now they're in the plains. Okay, so we will leave off there. Let's go to our commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you both what you've been daydreaming about lately. Hey, readers and reviewers. I want to put out an all call for guests who are fighting back against fascism. If you know an author or artist of any kind who is using their art or their platform to push back, especially if they are doing so in an interesting way that deserves more attention and support, share this show with them and encourage them to email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com, and we'll get them scheduled. And if you're looking for inspiring or practical ways you can push back, be sure to subscribe to the show so you catch all the great guests folks are going to recommend. See you here each week. Want to read a paranormal romance unlike any other? Love horses, monsters, and wry laugh-out-loud humor? Then Sparks is the book for you. Rosie wants to tear down the old cowshed on her ranch, but the old-timers tell her not to because it's unlucky. And boy, howdy is it ever. Rosie's new world is magic. Her boyfriend talks to animals, the demon under the barn is deadly and requires a cow for company. Rosie has to save her ranch, her love, and even her dog as she negotiates an unbelievable magical world. Romance, monsters, and magic for grown-ups? Yes, please. Check out Sparks by Maren Bradley Anderson.
You deserve a vacation.
How about a trip to a dude ranch on a colony planet?
Or a journey to a universe where wizards call lightning down from the sky and calm rumbling volcanoes?
Or a holiday tour of the major cities of Europe with
vampires and werewolves and witches as guides.
Or maybe just a nice hot sudsy bath with a book of poetry that will make you cry and sigh and laugh.
We've got you covered.
A paperback will appear on your doorstep each month to whisk you away, and you'll return refreshed, enlightened, and ready to make the world we share a brighter place for everyone.
Or if you prefer, you can sign up for a quarterly subscription and get 4 YA titles, 4 adult titles, or 4 collections of poetry per year.
Plus, you'll get book club questions from the author before you start the book and an interview with the author afterwards.
So, if you are in a book group or want to start one, this is everything you need in a kit. Will we occasionally throw in some extra surprises just to say thank you to our members? Of course.
You can also give someone their very own membership with all of the rights and privileges pertaining thereto.
So, find a reward level that's right for you.
And share this with your friends.
Join the Indulge Your Shelf Book Club today.
Your bookshelves deserve a little pampering. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Jessi Honard and Marie Parks, the authors of Unrelenting, which just came out in audiobook as well. I want to make sure to mention that with Mary Robinette Kowal doing the narration. It's amazing, so folks should check that out. Jessi and Marie, what have you been daydreaming about lately?
So, mentioned a couple times that I recently moved from California to Michigan. It's not that recent anymore. It's like it was in July, and we're recording this in February or March. It's March now. Wow. So it's been a solid like 7 months or something. So one of the things that has been really occupying my mind, because moving across the country is sort of a big ordeal, is just how to make a new place feel like home. So I've been really getting into just looking at different interior design on Pinterest and trying to figure out what, piece of furniture we want, or rug, or just little things like that to kind of continue to slowly build up a place that feels like a sanctuary.
Yeah.
And that's been a lot of fun because it's not something that I'm very intuitively good at. And so there's a lot of learning that comes from it and a lot of trial and error. And I really enjoy that. Actually, I very much enjoy not being good at something and being in that early learning stage of oh, this is why you do that. This is why this color and this color look terrible together, but this color and this slightly different color look amazing together. That's just not something that I usually think about. So it's been kind of a fun brain puzzle.
I found that to be a comfort I did not expect during a time of crisis was nesting. Okay, I'm going to redesign my space so that it feels comfortable to me. Do you have a particular way you would describe your aesthetic? What are you going for? What are your search terms?
It depends. So we're kind of ending up in this position where each room kind of is getting its own theme. So our living area is a little more Mediterranean themed. My wife is Sicilian American. We went to Sicily last summer. And so we've kind of pulled a lot of those vibes in. Our bedroom is very Southwest desert themed. We've got a lot of cactus and things like that, those Southwest colors with the red of the dirt and green of the cacti and things like that. And then the room I'm in right now, which is our office/guest room, we were just working on last night because we have visitors coming this weekend. And it's sort of taking on this dark library feel with the rich greens and older artwork and things like that. So it varies, and I like that. I like that it's okay, I feel I want to be in the desert today and I want something that's bright and airy, and so I go into my bedroom. Or I feel I need something that's dark and studious and dark academia. I'm going to go into the office. And so it's been fun.
Yeah, well, and it really can change your mindset. Okay, now I'm in this workspace, and now I'm in this comfy, warm space. I think that is wise to have the the various spaces. Marie, how about you?
It's also very.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say it's also very similar to how I am. I'm a thematic person. I'm I'm gonna dress in this theme today or that theme. So it fits me. Sorry,
Nice.
go ahead, Marie.
Yes. How about you? What have you been daydreaming about lately, Marie?
Well, it is early March, but we've actually had a few days in Albuquerque that have been in the 60s. We may have even touched 70. So I'm thinking about gardening this year and what I want to put in the earth and cultivate. I When I moved into this house in 2021, um, the front yard was gravel and the backyard was gravel. And the only plant I had was a prickly pear that was taking over the side yard. And so I gardened a lot when I grew up in North Carolina, but it's very, very different gardening in Albuquerque. So I've been learning about what it is like to garden here. A lot of water is needed. Um, but I also was very joyfully the recipient of three baby trees last year from a wonderful nonprofit called Tree New Mexico, where they come and plant the trees for you and they pick the perfect tree, the perfect location. And so cultivating those, knowing that, that's going to create little shady zones this year, thinking about that. Plus, we also, as many cities do, if listeners are not aware of this, go see if your public library has a seed library. So trying to figure out like, what do I want to grow from seed this year? What do I maybe want to get from the garden center sale that happens in a few months once the frost is over in like May. So yeah, I've been daydreaming about how to just continue every year. I just build like a little bit more because it's very expensive to build out a whole garden, but I can do like a thing a year and then maintain. So that's been fun.
Well, and it's a kind of Zen exercise too, like to go, okay, I'm going to have to be patient. I will be gardening vicariously through you because this has been the source of frustration. We're in this place for another month. And so I can't, and so the only plants, there's like some really cool ivy, and the people who, this is a place where it's a rental. They're constantly turning it over, so nobody maintains them. So I've been taking care of these strangers' ivy because. So what kind of trees are the three that are, local and that will, do well in your climate there?
Yeah, I have I think it's called lace bark elm. And that one, hopefully this tree will outlive me. I think it can get to about 60 feet. So it's going to provide a lot of shade someday. So it feels very important to keep cultivating it. And then there's also a couple of little oaks that are going to do well and probably drop a lot of acorns to make the squirrels very happy. But yeah, a lot of trees can grow well here. In fact, so there's one of the other joys that I have about my neighborhood is there is a store in my neighborhood that's basically a permanent farmers market, where local farmers come and bring their wares and then they are sold. There's no haggling. You pay what the farmers ask for it. Everything is super local, no more than like 150 miles away or so. And so I've been learning like what can actually grow here in our climate. And some of it has amazed me. So I've discovered like pomegranates can grow here. And they actually do quite well. So, I'm getting more ideas of like what do I want to grow just by paying attention to what's seasonal at the farm store. So yeah, there's a lot.
Well, and then you can take the acorns and return them to the library seed library. Like,
There you go,
okay,
exactly.
let's spread this. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So I mentioned I stole one of your announcements of the audiobook. Anything else that's coming up career wise that we need to get the word out about?
Yeah. So in addition to the audiobook being available pretty much anywhere audiobooks are
Everywhere,
available
yeah.
at this point, it's in all the places. It's great. Mary Robinette Cole did an amazing job narrating. Like it was really a dream to get her on board for this project. The other big news in my world is I have a short story that is coming out over the summer in the Lesbians in Space anthology
Very cool.
that I'm very excited about. It's a really cool anthology. Mary Robinette also actually has a story in that anthology, so it'll be a lot of fun coming out over the summer, and it's the first edition. Go ahead.
Oh, like trying to remember the other authors. I know Travis Baldtree is in there, and there
There
are
are
a
a
few
few,
other names. Anyway,
yeah, there are a few other people, and it's the first edition. There's actually going to be a second anthology as well. So if you like lesbians in space and you like the idea of lesbians in space, go ahead and add that
Oh,
one to
that
your
sounds
calendar. I think it
great.
comes out in July.
Very cool. And then Marie, you have some big news on a. Can you reveal the big news, or am I getting
yeah.
ahead of you there? Okay, well,
No, it's
tell
good. It's
everybody.
out
This
on
is very
Publishers
cool.
Marketplace, so I can say it. So yeah, so my I've been calling it my social justice fantasy heist. Actually, I sold it. So
Yes.
it's going to be coming out with a press called it's an imprint called Shadow Dragon Press. That's like the sci-fi fantasy imprint of Artemisia Publishing. I So, funny story about Jeff Habiger, who's the owner and founder of that publishing house, local to me, is back in 2018, maybe 2017. I don't know. I went to my first like writing event ever, and there was an opportunity to pitch some publishers. This was like local here in Albuquerque, very low key. My nervousness was off the charts. And I was like, I'm gonna pitch this Jeff fellow because I need practice pitching. And so I pitched Unrelenting. And then afterwards, Jeff said, would you please send me, the first chapter? And so sent the first chapter. And then Jeff said, great, I'd like to read the full manuscript. And I said, it's not written yet.
Yeah, yeah.
We did not know. I did not know. Like there's so much professional etiquette that is required in the publishing world that I had no idea about. And yet through it all, Jeff has remained a kind and a friend. And actually, along with you, Ben, was one of the like instructors and pitch guests at my writing retreat that I host
Yes.
annually in Albuquerque last year, is coming back this year. And so I have to say, like, even though I totally flubbed all of that,
It's not a cardinal sin, but it does, yeah, it does happen where folks they get
yeah,
us very excited about a book and then go, there's no book. And we're like,
yeah, it did. I mean, I have to thank Jeff because that really lit a fire under us to get the manuscript written.
right.
But anyway, so but he's expressed interest in this particular title since first hearing about it 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, so I think it's going to be a really nice experience to to collaborate with him on it. So
And is the title a working title? Is it set in stone? Can we share it?
I think it's set in stone because it's it's called Flightless. And it is the story of a desperate thief on his last heist that could potentially either end his career or end the unjust society that they live in. So I'm excited.
Very fun. Oh, I'm excited about that. Wonderful. So I want to ask you two for your advice. Who would be a good guest to have on this show?
So many people that I'm thinking of. I am currently I'm halfway through this anthology called Glitter and Ashes, Queer Tales of a World That Wouldn't Die. I backed it on Kickstarter like 5 years ago, got the book, set it aside, forgot about it. And then the world happened.
Right.
And I found the book and I'm like, this feels topical. And so I've been reading through the anthology. I'm about halfway through it. And the stories are so vibrant and they're so topical. They all take place in their own version of a dystopia that queer people are persevering through. And so I'm going to take sort of the cop-out answer and say literally anyone in that anthology, like I feel like would be a good guest on the show because I feel like the stories that they're telling are so relevant. They're also stories that align very well with the work that NotAPipe is doing. And I don't know, they're hitting me particularly hard at this point in time. And it's been a really they've been a solace to me, honestly, to see like even if the world burns around you, like queerness perseveres and queer family perseveres and found family perseveres. And so, yeah, that's sort of where my mind is going.
What's the title of it again? Glitter and
Glitter and Ashes, Queer Tales of a World That Wouldn't Die.
That's a great idea. I should just reach out to all those folks and say who would
Absolutely,
be,
yeah. You've got a full list right there.
Yeah, that gives me a lot to work with there. Marie, how about you? Anybody jump to mind?
Yeah, I'm gonna recommend Brent C. Lambert, who was actually one of the founding members of FIA, for which they won a Hugo. And Brent's book, Brent has a lot of publications in terms of short stories, but the longer work is A Necessary Chaos, which was with Leon Hemlock. It's Black, it's queer, it's wonderful. Brent is wonderful. We are friends with the podcast Just Keep Writing, and so Brent is one of the hosts there. But is just doing really wonderful work, and is a great person. So that's why I would recommend people checking out, and maybe for the show.
Yes. Well, I have them on the show, and then I would, do that terrible thing that podcasters do where we say, yeah, you should listen to this other person's podcast, which, it's a bad move. And yet that sounds great. Okay. I'll reach out to Brent for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to our send-off, some folks I do need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, the song I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to the author Stephen E. Scribner, author of the Ton Fantasy series, who makes music under the name S. Eric Scribner for his song A Poem that we used during the ad break, the song Pianosphere. If you make music and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's or Steven's song, so email me about that. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making the show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing, so please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate it and review it wherever you found it. Please check out Jessi and Marie's Unrelenting. It's such a good book. I'm always like, am I teasing too much to tell folks there's a huge twist and you're going to love it? Oh, no, I can't tell you what the twist is. There's an amazing twist at the end. So yeah, check that book out. You will get a kick out of it. It is, and you will be so excited about the sequel. Like I find myself, kind of the people watching can see that I am shaking with excitement about that. Tell a friend about it. That goes a long way. And then, give it that very short review is fine. Click the 5th star and write, this book is amazing. Like that, goes a long way. So for our send off, a little bit of advice going into your week. I just always want to remind people all writing is political. Speaking is political, and not writing or speaking is also political because silence maintains the status quo. So right now, especially, use your voice to make the world a better place. And how about you folks? What's your advice for everybody?
Mine is self-care is crucial. You'll often hear this is a marathon, not a sprint, but maybe sometimes it's actually a relay race. And if you have burned yourself out, or if you're in danger of doing that, or in danger, period, it may be time to just pass the baton and cheer, for a lap before you can jump back in. So you can stay in the game, and take care of yourself at the same time.
Oh, I like that metaphor a lot. Jessi, how about you? What's your advice for everybody?
Community is essential. It doesn't have to be a big community. It doesn't have to be 1 million people. It can be your significant other and 1 or 2 other close friends. But finding that space where you feel seen and heard, finding that space that isn't a bubble, but is a space of solace and a space of action is really, really important in a time where people are being pulled apart.
Here's a tiny bit of our bonus segment just for supporters of the Patreon.
Anyway, so it's a series where the children who turn into animals, this is a weapon that is given to them, it turns out in a very unauthorized fashion, by a dying alien who says, look, there's this other species, there are mortal enemies, and they are taking over not just the whole galaxy, but your planet too. by essentially invasion of the body snatcher. Sort of, they go into people and are able to see their memories, and know how they would respond, and essentially become that person, while they're just continually recruiting more and more people to their cause in this sort of war of subterfuge and deception. Meanwhile, the person whose body has been invaded is conscious and aware of the fact that they have been enslaved the entire time. And I know your face.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
And so they are literal children who are some of the only people who are fighting this, all while having to go to school and do homework. Meanwhile, it is infiltrating their own families. They are constantly in danger. They are having to keep their identity secret. There's a lot of gore. There's a lot of really difficult decisions. They're really, really dark. And my mother told me when I told her this, I don't think I would have let you read those if I had known what the content was.
The covers did not have the blood and guts on them.
No.
But I can imagine, I mean, as a metaphor for kind of, ideology, here your loved ones trapped in a way of thinking that even they are not served by. I'm like, that strikes a little close to home.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and one of the things that I really appreciate about the series too is like as you get deeper into it, like many kids shows or books or whatnot of that era, there's the good guys and the bad guys, right? You've got these people who can turn into animals and fight the evil body snatchers, but that doesn't stay true for very long. This series spends a lot of time introducing the shades of gray and the fact that sometimes good guys can do really bad things, and sometimes the bad guys are actually like there are people who are just stuck in a system that they hate and that they cannot find a way out of. And sometimes the people who you thought were the good guys who gave you these like magical powers to turn into alien or turn into animals, and you were like, oh my God, they're going to come and save us, actually just want to blow your planet up. Like it's really good at talking about all the nuance in difficult political wartime societies, which is a lot for a fifth grader, but
Right.
It was done in a way that really it has staying power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I take